All right, great. So we are going to go over just some ground rules for our webinar today. Ideally, we would love for everyone to have their phones on mute and enable the speaker view if you can. And also just be ready to participate. We're going to have a great webinar. It's going to be educational, and we really hope that you'll take away something from this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, academic writing and editing basics by Akintunde Sogunro and Kyra Alvarez. So a little bit about our speakers today. Akintunde Sogunro is a professional writer. He was born in Nigeria, raised in Edmonton, Alberta, and spent his childhood in Canada. And he is very decorated in martial arts. But most importantly, why he's here today is to talk to us about writing. He earned his MFA, which is a Master's in Fine Arts in Creative Writing from Western Connecticut State University, after receiving his bachelor's degree in theater from Southern Connecticut State University. Akintunde has published a children's book called Mama Stitches, as well as directed and produced an award-winning short film documentary called Victory. He also happens to be my brother. So he will be one of our speakers today, in addition to Miss Kyra Alvarez. Miss Kyra Alvarez is pursuing a writing degree with a minor in psychology at Western Connecticut State University. And she also is one of our interns here at the Do Influence. And we have been really fortunate to have her. Kyra not only does all of our blog writing, Kyra also does the editing for the educational platform, as well as takes part in some of our social media as well. Kyra is a writer herself. She has worked on a lot of blog posts, not just for us, but for her own creative writing as well. Through social media, she's been able to reach out to a lot of her audience that way as well. And she is really an eloquent writer. So if you haven't read her stuff yet, go to our blog and you'll see. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our speakers today.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. As Dr. Sogunro mentioned, my name is Akintunde Sogunro. Truly honored to be here before you all today. Welcome all. I'm truly excited for this webinar. Our webinar is going to be divided into two key parts. Part one being structure, part two being formatting. Two elements. There are two primary focuses when it comes to essay writing. The first part is just structure. What does your outline look like? What is what I call the anatomy of an essay? What does it look like? Part two is the formatting when it comes to the MLA in terms of quotations, punctuation, and things of the sort. So Ms. Kyra is going to take care of that. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. Everybody, so I want to get started, everybody, with part one, the structure. So I want to start out with part one, how to start an essay. So the first thing you want to do when you start an essay is to research your topic as first. You're going to use a variety of sources, including books, articles, journal entries, credible websites, and more. Check your school's database for amazing, credible sources. Use keyword searches. Break down the information into pieces and organize it into an outline. Then you can then write out into a paper. It's key. That's why I tell people, when you're writing a paper, it's really an argument. In a way, you're in a court case, right? You're delivering a very, very powerful argument towards, right, a group of people. So you make sure it's on point, it's articulate, concise, and very strong, all right? I don't believe there are any bad or good papers per se. I believe there are stronger and weaker papers. So my goal today, by the end of this webinar, is to give you enough tools to make sure you can write a strong, effective A paper. All right? So we're going to move on right now to the first element in our next slide. The first element in any essay is a thesis. Thesis is everything. All right? The thesis is an argument that can be supported by evidence. A thesis statement is one of the greatest unifying aspects of a paper. It should act as a mortar, holding together the various bricks of a paper, summarizing the main point of the paper in a nutshell, and pointing towards the paper's development. Another way to describe it is that a thesis statement can help map a paper as it suggests the order or direction for the paper's development. Another way to phrase it is that a thesis is an opinion based on fact. You need both elements, an opinion based on fact. You need both. All right. Oftentimes people will just say, this is what I believe, this is what I feel, and there's no corroborating evidence. You're going to have strong evidence, just like in a court of law. All right. And like I said, one of my goals during this seminar, this webinar, is to really help you guys ace your essays. So I want to move on now. It's one thing to understand the definition of a thesis. Another thing to say, okay, what does a thesis look like? What are some examples of strong thesis? You want two things when you're writing a thesis. You want it to be narrow, very specific, and strong. Okay? We're going to move on to a couple of examples real quick. So we're now going to move on to our polling section. A little bit of a live audience participation. Dr. Sogunro is going to help us out here. We'll have a little bit of fun with our polling element. All right? So I'm going to ask you a question, what your opinion is on a specific thesis statement. You all let me know. We're going to vote. All right? Our first one is pollution. Is pollution bad for the environment? We'll take a moment to vote. Is this a weak thesis or a strong thesis? You let me know. All right, answering the first two questions right there. All right, the first two. I think the poll is all set, Dr. Sogunro. Okay. All right, and based off the poll, okay, based off the poll, most of you do believe that pollution is bad for the environment, okay? That it is a weak thesis statement, all right? That's great. Great job. All right, take a look at number two. At least 25% of the federal budget should be spent on limiting pollution. Some of you say that's strong. Most of you guys say that's strong. Excellent job. Let's kind of break it down real quick and kind of dissect this now. So pollution is bad for the environment. Pollution is bad for the environment. It's a weak thesis statement that it's not specific. There are no facts there. It's just a generalized statement. I believe that pollution is bad for the environment, okay? We're talking about strong academic, high school and collegiate academic writing, right? We want a strong thesis statement. All right, we're checking out these statements. Okay, great job. Good. Number two, at least 25% of the federal budget should be spent on limiting pollution. Most of that's a strong thesis statement. I concur. It is a strong statement because it's very specific. Let's break it down. This individual believes at least 25% of the federal budget should be spent. That's a very specific amount on limiting pollution. The topic there is pollution. So they have a strong stance on the topic. They said how much they believe. So if we had to break it down, this essay, the focus of the essay in terms of arguments should be, okay, why should we limit pollution? And what are the effects of pollution? Right? Showing strong information towards that thesis statement. The thesis is the bedrock, it's the foundation of your paper. All right? Cool. We're going to move on to our next two examples. Polling these. These are a lot of monkeys are dying, okay? All right, and then number 4 right there. Chimps are in massive danger of extinction from dwindling habitats. Two very, very different thesis statements. Let's take a look at the first one. A lot of monkeys are dying. Most of you academics, you can tell, it's a very weak and very broad thesis statement. It's too broad. It doesn't have a specific and narrow focus. Moving on to the next one. Chimps. Chimps are in massive danger of extinction from dwindling habitats. Much more narrow. We're focused on a specific type of monkey, the chimp, okay, the species. What's happening to them? They're in massive danger of extinction from dwindling habitats. That's the issue, okay? This is taken from Jane Goodall, a very, very renowned scientist, okay? A much more specific, much more narrow thesis statement, all right? We'll take a look at our last one right here. Our final thesis statement. At least 25% of the federal budget should be spent on helping upgrade businesses to clean technologies, researching renewable energy sources, and planting more trees in order to control or eliminate pollution. Very specific. The numbers are there. The focus is there. Let's kind of analyze this for a moment. At least 25% of the federal budget should be spent on helping upgrade businesses. That's a stance. That's the opinion in the thesis statement. That's their stance. They believe that 25% should be spent. That's great. Then they give specific examples. It's for clean technology, researching renewable resources, all right, and planting more trees in order to control or eliminate pollution. Very specific ways to combat pollution. They didn't just state a claim, they had very specific ways to back up and corroborate their claim. A very strong and a very narrow, specific thesis statement. Moving on. Great. So the thesis is the first and primary element of any essay. In addition to the thesis, it's what I call the anatomy of an essay. It's the structure. Once again, my goal is that once you master this structure, you can go into any class, any high school collegiate class, get the assignment, and ace your essay. It's all about studying the form and the technique. Just like an artist will study form for years, Picasso studied form. or business manager studies systems leadership, all right? If you master this form, you will master essay writing. Once again, thesis is the first part. Want to take a look at our outline over here, what the anatomy or what an essay looks like, what an A essay would look like. You see A right there is a supporting argument, number one, B is supporting argument number two, and C is supporting argument number three. You want three strong and differing, all right, arguments that corroborate your thesis. Very key. All right, we have the letter D. The final one is the conclusion. In your conclusion, you can kind of reset your thesis in a new way, bringing the reader back towards your focus, back towards your thesis. All right. Moving on to the next part right there. I'll load this up. So during the argument, within each argument, you want to break it down. For example, in argument number one, you'll have your evidence, your details, and more details. The more details, the better. You don't want to overwhelm the reader. You want to have strong supporting details for each argument. All right, moving on to what I call strength points. Once again, if you follow these tactics, you will get an A. There are different ways to strengthen your paper. You want to have a strong A paper. I'm going to give you 3 tactics, 3 tools to do that. This is unique in that I've been on both sides of this, okay? I've been a student myself, also been a professor myself. So I know what it's like, guys, to say, all right, I just want to get a paper done. I just want to finish it, keep it moving. Pulled an all-nighter, I want to get it done. That's not the goal here, all right? The goal is to be intentional and really ace the essay. So I'm going to give you guys the insight, almost the behind the scenes from a professor. What does a professor want? What is a professor looking for in their paper? If you can know what a professor exactly is looking for, you can then write that paper and get an A because you fulfilled their requirements. Okay, guys? Very, very simple. Cool. We're going to focus on 3 specific things to help you in your papers, guys. 3 strength points. Number 1 is facts. Moving on to our facts. Good. It's important to have facts involved in your arguments. For example, historical dates, information. There's a great example here. On April 9th, 1865, General Robert E. Lee surrendered his Confederate troops to Union's Ulysses S. Grant, all right, at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. That is a statement, not an opinion, it's a fact, okay? It's a historical fact. Oftentimes in papers, you want to write opinions. I believe this happened or this happened. Give me concrete facts. Strengthen your argument with historical information. Moving on to number 2, a second example here, all right? Another key here is to connect your thoughts. And oftentimes when you're writing a paper, I just want to get it done. So oftentimes we're overwhelmed with so many thoughts. We don't know how to structure our thoughts into a comprehensive and coherent argument. I'm going to help you guys out to kind of connect your thoughts and connect the dots to write a great paper. All right. For example, let's say your topic was Uncle Tom's Cabin, okay, by Harriet Beecher Stowe, the historical, legendary novel. Let's say your topic was, did Uncle Tom's Cabin, or how did Uncle Tom's Cabin influence the Civil War? How did it influence, number 1, or maybe how did it influence? Maybe you believed, I do believe that this book influenced the war. Okay, once again, how do you prove it? Let's take a look at some facts. All right, in 1852, Uncle Tom's Cabin was published. In 1852, Uncle Tom's Cabin sold 10,000 copies in the United States in its first week, 300,000 in the first year, and in Great Britain, 1.5 million copies in 1 year. That's a lot of copies. In the 19th century, the only book to outsell Uncle Tom's Cabin was the Bible. All right, a couple things. So in the first year, it sold 300. So if we look at it, all right, the book was published in 1852. The war didn't start till 1861. That's 9 years the book was in circulation. In the first year, it published over 300,000 copies. Here's another quote from a very award-winning, reputable author, David S. Reynolds. And because reading the novel aloud was a favorite pastime of families and literary groups, it likely reached many more people. Uncle Tom has probably 10 readers to every purchaser. 10 readers to every purchaser. So in that first year, 300,000 people, okay, read the book, and the population of the United States was only 23 million at the time, okay? All right? If that's the case, okay, guys, times 10, all right, it's almost 1 in every 6 people read this book or influenced by this book. People are reading about it. Have you heard about this book, Uncle Tom's Cabin? Can you believe about slavery? They're sharing it. So it's influencing a lot of people. One in every six people heard about the book. It can be very well thought that, wow, this could have influenced the mass popular culture, therefore influence the president, therefore influence the government into taking action into the Civil War. Once again, you're proving your statement with facts, not just opinion, but facts. All right? Great. We're going to move on, guys. So our next topic, our next tool, don't forget our first tool, our first strength point was facts. Moving on now to statistics. All right? So for statistics, for example, opioids were involved in 46,802 overdose deaths in 2018. 69.5% of all drug overdose deaths, okay, were made up of opioid addictions. Here's the issue, guys, okay? Let's say you're writing an article about opioid abuse. Are opioids responsible for deaths in America, for a certain amount of deaths, certain amount of overdose, certain amount of suicides, or even overdose? The goal is to have as many statistics as you can to support your claim. Using the numbers helps to support and strengthen your argument, all right? Let's take a look at number 2. 9.7% of youth in the US have severe major depression, compared to 9.2% in last year's data set. This rate was highest among youth who identify as more than one race, at 12.4%. That's a lot. Once again, you're using statistics to strengthen and support your argument, guys. Very key, very crucial. Use the numbers to help to strengthen you. We're going to move. Good, all right? Our last and probably our strongest, most effective key and strength point is what I call counter arguments. Let's take a look. One way to strengthen your argument and show that you have a deep understanding of the issue that you are discussing is to anticipate and address counter arguments or objections. By considering what someone who disagrees with your position might have to say about your argument, you show that you have some thoughts, you thought it through, and you can dispose of some of the reasons your audience might have for not accepting your argument. Referring back to the court metaphor, if your argument, your paper is, you're in court, the other side is trying to poke holes in your argument. Your professor, your teacher might say, okay, this is good, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Okay, have you thought about the other perspective? So you want to be able to understand your teacher's perspective, your reader's perspective, and create a counter argument already ready to go for that, okay? That's very, very key, guys, to create a counter argument, okay? For example, let's say you're doing opioids, let's say you're doing history, okay, guys? You create a counter argument accordingly, all right? And include that into your paper. Very, very key, all right? So we're going to move on. We're going to go into a little more in depth in regards to counter arguments later on during our Q&A. So I'm very excited about part 2 of our workshop today, of our webinar. Without further ado, I'm going to pass the torch on to Ms. Kyra Alvarez for part 2, formatting.
Hi guys, how are you today? We're going to start with a poll question, and this is going to be, we're going to ask you when it would be best to be using quotations during a paper. So the poll question should be up in just a moment. So everyone seemed to have picked every one of these, which is all correct. So good job. They were all correct. So using quotations in papers, you have to be when the language is especially vivid or expressive. So meaning like if you find a piece in a book or on a website and you're like, oh, this is amazing, that's great language, or that's nice wording, I would put it in the paper and then explain why that's like a good piece to put in. Also, when exact worded is needed for technical accuracy is really important for teachers and professors alike to see these actual words that need to be completely and embedded into your paper. The next point that I put down is when it is important to let the debaters of an issue explain their position in their own words. So it's kind of similar to when exact word is needing for technical accuracy. So when we need that exact wording from a particular individual, or we just need the person to have that wording in the paper, it just creates a stronger argument. And then lastly, I wrote down when the words of an expert lend weight to an argument. So that means that when an expert is saying something very important to an argument that you're putting into your paper, you want to make sure that you write and say what you're trying to say along with the expert. So now it creates and increases your credibility. So for the next slide, I wanted to focus a lot on quotes because quotes can be a little bit confusing in papers. Sometimes the formatting can be off, and other times a lot of professors and teachers can take off some points because of that. So I want to make sure that I'm able to go over those. So what I first wrote down is being sure to frame all of your quotes. So that means that everything is like framed around and the quote isn't just standing alone. Don't let sources stand on your own with only the help of quotation marks. Like I just said, make sure that the quote isn't just there in the middle of your writing. You want to lead into it somehow, and then be sure to support your quotes by introducing or leading them into it. Like I also just said, lead into your quotes with your own words, and then you'll be able to write the quote. So for instance, we'll go into the next slide. So using quotes economically, quote only what you need for when the quote is helpful. So whenever possible, keep your quotes under a sentence and enough to embed gracefully into one of your own sentences. So I took this out of a UFO book because I've been studying a lot of UFOs in one of my writing classes. And I wrote this example down. Leslie Kahn emphasizes how roughly 90 to 95% of UFO sightings can be explained. So I wrote right before that the little splurge that I had to write. And then after I put a little piece, made that into one sentence. I put part of my writing and then part of the quote, making it into one sentence. And something very important for the ending formatting of the quotation, you want to make sure this is for MLA specifically, that the parentheses are, or you have the author's last name and then the page number. There's no comma in between the author and the page number. And also very important to note that the punctuation, as you can see signified by the arrow on the slide, does not go after the quotation or before the quotation. It goes at the end of your citation. So we'll go to the next slide. So construct your own sentence so that the quote fits smoothly into it. So you saw that before. Like I was saying, you write your own words and then you go into the quotation so it's not a standalone quote. If you must add or change a word in the quotation to make it fit into your sentence, put those square brackets around the altered portion. So for example, I wrote a source comment like, I deeply distrust Freud's method of interpretation might become this. He writes that he, which is your own writing, and that's bold for you to kind of interpret, deeply distrusts. And the distrust, I put the S because that was not part of the original writing. That's part of my own writing. Freud's method of interpretation. So those are just a few things to kind of think about when you're putting a quote into your papers. All right. Now we'll go to the next one. So setting up quotes by saying who's about to speak is really important, just because if you're writing a quote down and the reader doesn't know who's speaking, then there's really no point in adding the quote in because you want to add some credibility, some stature behind the quote. So the first example I wrote is, according to some, dreams express profound aspects of personality. Folks, a 184. Those other disagree. So we don't know who's speaking in this quote. And it kind of is very vague because it says, according to some. Some, who's some? We want to make sure that we know who some is. So instead, this is a better, stronger setting up like the quote and making sure that we know who's speaking. According to Folks' study, dreams may express profound aspects of personality. So this is different because we introduced what the study was, why the quote is being followed, and why it's very important for the paper. All right. And then the last slide on citing quotes is, whenever you omit words from the middle of a quoted passage, insert 3 spaced periods to indicate the omission. So the three space periods actually is called an ellipsis, and it's not just three dots or three periods. It's actually like one piece of punctuation, and that's really important just to know as a side fact. And we want to make sure that we use them correctly. So in the example of a quote, I wrote, Sarah writes, I must be strong enough to get past the pain of my first hangover. Drugs kill 199. So I cut out the pieces in between the quote and indicated that by putting the ellipsis right in the middle of the quote. That means that I took what is strong about this piece of writing, cut out what's not needed, and then added in the rest that needs to be understood. And you got a nice quote that helps the piece of your and argument of your paper. So I got a little writing tip for the next slide. So the writing tip has to do with active and passive voice. So in a sentence, either we write in active or passive voice. So the subject is doing the action when we're writing an active voice for a sentence. And then for a passive voice, the action is being done to the subject in a sentence. We're going to watch this video really quickly, and it's going to just encapsulate that whole idea really quick.
Passive voice.
Active, passive.
What is voice?
Voice refers to the who or what that is doing the verb's action in a sentence.
Active voice
Means that the subject is doing the action. Therefore, there's an active subject.
Passive voice
Means the subject is receiving the action. Therefore, this is the passive subject.
So, to figure out whether a sentence is active or passive voice, look at the subject. Is the subject performing the action, active, or receiving the action, passive?
An example, the boy plays the piano.
Boy equals subject, plays equals verb, the boy is doing the action, therefore the boy is the active subject. Because the boy is the active subject,
Then this sentence is written in the active voice. The piano is played by the girl.
piano equals subject, is played equals verb, the piano is receiving or not doing the action, therefore the piano is the passive subject. Because the piano is the passive subject,
Then this sentence is written in the passive voice.
why do we care?
Active voice is more concise, easier to understand, and less work for your reader.
So that was, hopefully that was able to sum up what active versus passive voice is. And the reasons why this is important is because when we're writing an active voice, it's a lot easier to understand, as the video just said, it's a lot easier to understand, and it's more concise rather than the extra wording, and it makes the sentence a little clamored, I would say. So I'm going to pass the torch back to Tunde, and he's going to talk about a few more examples of active versus passive voice.
A couple quick examples, guys. I think the video is very, very concise, very articulate. The goal with your writing is to be as concise as possible. Use as few words as possible to say a lot, okay? I think the video gave us some great examples, guys. Just one or two quick ones, okay? Let's say you're describing the savannah, okay? You're describing animals, something roaming. You might say that giraffes roam the savannah. You wouldn't say the savannah is roamed by the giraffes roam the savannah, okay? So once again, it's a subject, the giraffes, the noun, okay, doing the action. The noun, the giraffes are roaming the savannah. You want to start with the subject and then the verb, and then you go from there. Subject plus verb agreement, and the subject is doing the action, guys, all right? So that's that, guys. Active voice, another technique to really strengthen your writing, strengthen your argument, all right? Ms. Kyra, thank you. I'm going to pass it back to you.
This is a typical MLA works cited, and usually the author is stated first, and then the last name of the author, and then it's the first name of the author as well. We want to make sure that we put the date and then also your last name and page number on the top. Do you have anything else to add on there?
Just to kind of piggyback that, Kyra, that was an excellent explanation. Some of you may not be used to works cited, may be frustrating. A lot of technicalities when it comes to a works cited. Certain things need to be italicized, certain things need to have quotes. It's very, very specific, very technical. So what I suggest is having a master the technique, master the form as much as possible. What I would suggest is maybe having a copy of either an A paper with an A works cited, or this very simple that we've included here. Okay, that's going to be included with you and sent to you. Okay, having a template with you of an exact, precise works cited to know exactly how it's supposed to be formatted. So when you're doing your paper, opposed to questioning, is this right? You look right to the format, look right to the template, and you line up your paper to the template. And I believe Ms. Kyra, in addition to our template we showed you here, has an amazing online resource she's going to pass on to you guys. So I'm going to pass the torch right back to Ms. Kyra.
Absolutely. So to make the works cited, it looked kind of overwhelming. And it looks very overwhelming to me as a student. When I first saw those works cited, I was like, how do I do this all on my own? You know, like what is going on? How do I format everything? How do I make sure I italicize these certain titles, whatever? There's a whole bunch of different things. It's good to know that so you are able to make sure that you kind of have those technicalities in. But also there's free apps and application and sites for your writing, and it actually automatically cites these works cited for you. It also has a lot of resources for you to do in-text citations, like I was telling you before with quotations and all of that. So Son of Citation Machine, EasyBib, Grammarly usually focuses more on the grammar, and then the Purdue Online Writing Lab, which actually I used to help create this PowerPoint. So these are all very good applications and resources for you to write with. And the last slide, so revision and editing is typically seen as like just the monotony, the dragging aspect of your writing. The actual writing is the creative part, and you're like, okay, all these ideas are being shoveled out. But then once after you're done and you're like, okay, what do I do? How do I organize everything? With the outline, first of all. Then second of all, you have to make sure that you revise and edit your pieces. So some 2 tips that I pulled out in my own writing is reading your paper out loud for missing words and grammatical errors. There's something about when you write or read your own paper and you hear it that helps you realize that you're missing a few words, or maybe the sentence doesn't flow correctly, and it helps you revise your pieces a lot easier. And then a second trusted pair of eyes reading over your paper is actually really important too, because it gets a second opinion and you're able to just put that writing into another perspective. And I think that is the last slide for you guys. All right.
All right.
So,
If I can just piggyback that, Ms. Kyra, that's cool.
yeah.
That was amazing, amazing information, guys. It's very, very important to read things out loud. That helps. When we read things out loud, guys, we can miss things that we often didn't notice when we're writing. So reading aloud is huge. And I would say this, I know as a high school student or as a college student, oftentimes we think, you know what? I just want to get the paper done. I just want to finish it and submit it. That's it. We don't think about drafts. As a professional writer myself, I've learned that there's a certain discipline of drafts. It takes a discipline to say, okay, I wrote the first draft, but that's not what I want to send in. I want to get it better. I want to improve, constantly improve so I can get an A. So I want to help you guys start shifting your focus a little bit, opposed to just let me finish a paper. No, let me finish it. Let me ace this paper by applying the discipline of drafts and drafting and drafting and drafting until it's perfect and ready to submit. All right, guys?
All right. Thank you so much to Akintunde Sogunro and to Kyra Alvarez. That has been absolutely riveting. I know I personally have learned a lot of things. You can never be too late to learn anything. So everyone, we're so glad that you're with us. We're going to open it up to the question and answer session. I would like to introduce Ms. Alicia Garnett, who is our education coordinator for our educational seminars at the Do Influence, and she will open up that Q&A to you all.
Hi, everybody. I hope you are getting some really great tidbits. Even as a writing teacher, there's a couple things in there that I really appreciated. So we want to hear your questions. Feel free to type them into the chat. Feel free to raise your hand on Zoom, or you've got to really shake your hand at me because I'm looking at a lot of screens here. But let me know what you have questions about. We are here to answer for you. I know I have one quick question that I was thinking about as people are typing in their own questions. Can you guys address the idea of brainstorming or outlines, or like putting your ideas on paper versus just sitting down and starting to type out what the topic is?
I think brainstorming and outlining is probably almost the most important process. I come at papers from an academic perspective, also as an artist. If you guys start thinking about writing, it's both an art and a science. It's wordplay, it's structure. You got to play with it, okay, till you find the strongest way to present this, okay? I'm thinking about sculptors, okay? They take a raw piece and have to sculpt it down until it's just precise into a statue. So I think brainstorming and outlining is crucial because you want to have a strong foundation, right? You can't build your house at a strong foundation, okay? Once you've got your topic, find a concrete thesis. You know what? This is a strong thesis. I think sometimes for us when we're young, trying to write, we say, okay, cool, I found a topic, but I'm not that interested in it. Take your time to find a very strong thesis statement that's weighty, that's debatable, that's arguable. Say, you know what, I can write an entire paper, an A paper based off of this. So take your time, find a really strong thesis, brainstorm the necessary arguments, and then go from there. Once you have that foundation, everything else should flow from there. Just my 2 cents.
I'll add on to that actually. So for brainstorming, personally for me, as a student, I'm constantly writing papers, constantly. So sometimes I'm like, I have a whole bunch of papers I have to do at once, and I'm like, how do I organize this? So sometimes I like to put different pieces on like separate papers, separate documents, and I just write down regular random ideas. And sometimes I research, well, how can I expand on this idea? What can I do to make this more approachable to a writer, to a reader? And so I do some research and kind of expand on each idea. And then once I expand on it even more. And I like to use bullets, especially for brainstorming, because it is really helpful to get those ideas down, making sure that you are able to just break it down, and then you can put those ideas into an outline format, which will help organize your paper.
So I do have one question, and the question was, can you start an essay with a quotation? Is that an okay thing to do?
All right, I'll take that one. So for quotations, I mean, I think it would be great if you add in like I said earlier, add in a little piece of your writing to introduce the quote and then go into the quotation. And then that can act as your hook to the essay. So it can act as the piece that really adds the question as to what the essay is, So I think that if you add your own little writing and then embed it into the quote, then I think it's acceptable to be able to do that. What do you think, Tunde?
I agree. Once again, it's having a strong argument and using the quote to support what you already believe and using it articulately. Absolutely.
Right.
So the question is there a good place to actually do my writing? So, it's a student asking, so I'm assuming this is what they're asking, but does it have to be in a quiet dorm room? Can I be in a common area? Like, what do you guys recommend for the actual writing part?
I would say this. The key to this is knowing yourself. Knowing yourself, knowing your voice, and know how you work. Some people who are more introverted, they might prefer a quiet space. That's fine. Some people who are more extroverted might say, you know what, I need to be in the computer lab. Or maybe I need to be at Starbucks. I need energy around me to help me focus. Okay? Some people might say, I like to take a walk. Okay? To see another question there. Take a walk. Maybe taking a walk by the lake, by a pond with a notepad. Okay? I think number one is knowing yourself so that you can create the next necessary strategy. I'm trying to say this. I would say, number one, know yourself and know the phases of a paper. So we talk about brainstorming, how you start. The first step is really brainstorming, right? Doing the research, finding your thesis. That's one phase. Then there's drafting the paper. Then there's revising. You don't have to do all of that in one place. Maybe for some of you, just to get your thoughts going a little bit, you like to take a walk, take a bike ride, do something, or find what works for you to brainstorm. Then you got to sit down and write. Some people can physically write on paper. I type on my phone sometimes, on the computer. Whatever works best for you, do that. That'll help you to write the best paper you possibly can. So,
Thank you,
my 2
Mr.
cents.
Tunde. Shannon wants to ask a question. Shannon, if you'll unmute, the floor is yours.
Hello. I recently wrote a research news report paper for my microbiology class, and I got some constructive criticism on something called a comma splice. And basically, I misused not the word, however, but the punctuation surrounding it. I just wanted to basically get more clarification on that because it's the first time in my undergraduate career that I've actually heard of this grammatical error, and I didn't know how many times I probably misused that. But basically, if you guys could explain what a comma splice is to me and how to properly put however into my papers, that would be great.
All right. So I'll take this. A comma splice technically it's as if you're using the comma as a punctuation for like ending a sentence. So for instance, if I say, my name is Kyra Alvarez and I like to drink tea, and then end it with a comma and then keep going with like another piece of like information, then that is a comma splice, and it kind of separates your writing in different ways that it's not supposed to be. You are using the commas incorrectly, and you should be using the commas within the sentence rather than ending your sentences with that. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. So
Mhm.
a follow-up question basically. So when you use a semicolon then maybe as a ending to the next, like the previous sentence, do you have to capitalize however?
Yes, you do, because there is a period on the top of that comma, so that that capitalization should like be signified as the beginning of like another sentence. It's a semicolon is kind of like a mixture between a comma and a sentence.
Okay. Thank you guys.
Absolutely.
So there's a question from Peter. He's asking, what is the best way to end a paper?
It's a good question.
Well done, Peter. Good question.
Well done. So clearly, the conclusion is the end of your paper. You want to restate your thesis in a unique way and finish the argument, finish the debate. What I would suggest, once again, is leave the reader with a lasting image. This is the last thing they're going to read. This is the last thing before they grade the paper. Give them a last final punch, a last final statement that articulates your thesis, your belief, and your stance. Hit them hard, finish strong.
Thank you, Mr. Tunde. That's a great answer. Jacqueline is asking, are there any apps or sites that one can use to improve one's writing? So I thought we had a slide about that.
Yes, we did. If we can go back to it.
Yeah. Jacqueline, the answer is yes. Yes,
there's so
and
many.
Let me show you some.
So Citation Machine actually helps with your citations. It helps with a whole bunch of different, like, not grammatical, but formatting issues for your writing. So Grammarly, though, focuses on your grammar. It helps with punctuation, with the way that you kind of express yourself, and it really helps with that part of your writing. And then Purdue Online Writing Lab is amazing for everything. It has everything that you need on there. I use it. I have used it for this presentation. It has whether you are trying to improve the grammar on it. There's a whole bunch of different resources on that website, and I definitely suggest checking that one out. Also, the Do Influence.
Absolutely.
There are definitely a lot of resources on the Do Influence website. If you go to our website, there is a part that's labeled resources, and there's all sorts of things to improve not only writing, but you and your professional development. So definitely go and check that out. And then if you look at the education section, you'll see there's some more resources there as well. So does anybody have any more questions? Anything else that you can think of that you might want to ask our excellent panelists here?
I have a question that I wanted to put to our wonderful and esteemed panelists today. For students who are in college or in high school, how do you suggest that they approach their teacher or professor? Because you guys are writers, you guys are professional writers, right? So this is something that comes natural to you all. But to someone who does not necessarily write a lot, maybe they're more science-based and not necessarily literature-based, how do you recommend the best way to approach their teacher or professor to ask for help?
I would say number one, in the onset of the assignment, don't wait till the end. Don't wait till the day before it's due. At the very beginning, if you're having challenges, you have questions, wait at the very beginning, approach the professor or teacher. Say, hey, thank you for this assignment. A little bit of trouble. I would like your help, just some insight during this assignment. And it's a balance. They're not going to do the paper for you, right? You need to do the work, but what's possible is getting some guidance along the way. Opposed to the papers, I give you the paper one day, it's due in 2 weeks, you submit it and you fail and get a D. Hey, professor, is it possible that I can maybe show you my thesis once it's set? Maybe give me some feedback. Let me show you one of my supporting arguments. You can give me some feedback. And depending on the professor or teacher, they should be reasonable enough to provide you that feedback. Once again, you're doing the work, they're just providing feedback along the way. I think it's probably definitely one good way to go about it. That way you're not waiting to the end. You have feedback along the way before you submit your paper.
Yeah, I think that just being completely honest with your professor, I know that when I'm having trouble or I need some resources besides outside resources, I reach out to my teacher, I email them and I'm like, hey, like I'm having some trouble with this. Maybe get as specific as possible as to what you're having trouble with, and they'll help you as best as possible with whatever your specific issue is.
You can definitely look in if you have the chat window up, and if you don't, you can click that. But there is a link there to our website, thedoinfluence.com. Definitely want you guys to follow us on social media. We have all sorts of great webinars, different contests, all great. I mean, like the list is endless. So visit us, follow us. We'd love to have more people in our network. Yeah. So Dr. Sogunro, if you want to talk about the next webinar coming up.
Absolutely. Again, I just want to say, first and foremost, thank you so much to Ms. Kyra Alvarez and to Mr. Akintunde Sogunro. This was phenomenal. You guys brought your knowledge and you were able to share it with us, and we really appreciate it. I'm sure I speak for all of our participants that this was excellent, and I thank you very much for your time today. I thank all of our participants today for joining us. I hope that this was educational for you as well. I would love for you to join us on social media at The Do Influence, as well as visit us on our website at www.thedoinfluence.com. We have a lot of educational resources that are all free for students of all ages. And you can also interact with our speakers through our platform as well. They are more than happy to chat with you and help you with different projects and different things that you may have going on. Every month we have an educational webinar. Our next webinar is next month, December. Will be December 16th at 4 p.m. and it will be on nursing school success tips. So basically, how do you get into nursing school? How do you become successful? How do you stay successful? And how do you make it through well? This is for people who are in high school, people who are in college, and for people who are already in nursing school and trying to have a really good time and make sure that their career is successful. It will be by a colleague who is a nurse practitioner and has, graduate level education in nursing education specifically. So she's really a good resource, Ms. Nicole Crux. So I really thank everyone. If there are any more comments or concerns, please shoot them in the chat. You can also email us as thedoinfluence@gmail.com. Again, in about a week from now, we'll have the video of this recording as well as an ebook available on our website. When you click on our website, just go to the education tab and you'll get a world of resources like Miss Alicia Garnett said. Again, I thank you very much. I think I speak for all of us when we say we hope that you have a lot of success in whatever your endeavors are. And please join us at The Do Influence. If you have any suggestions for future topics you would like us to work on for future seminars, let us know. We want this to be educational for you. So if there are certain topics that you want, let us know and we'd be happy to work on it. All right. So thank you so much. Are there any last minute questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So when it comes to, for instance, like a literature review in a research paper, it's always awkward for me to synthesize like kind of the information that I've collected, because in the process of synthesizing, you're using all the knowledge from other papers. And so I guess my question is like, how do you know when you're synthesizing ideas versus like when you're plagiarizing? Like, I don't know, like, because sometimes I feel when I take ideas from other like resources, it's like I'm stating what's in that resource, but I'm like, does this count as plagiarism? And yeah.
No problem. I'll take this. Number one, to piggyback what Kyra said, the key in any paper is to have a strong claim and evidence. Make the claim your own, make it original. You can provide all the evidence from all the different sources you want, so long as your claim is original. So understand what you're saying. What if other papers, other assignments are so similar to yours, you don't want to feel like it's plagiarism, right? The key is number one, make sure your work is original, your idea, and then you cite your sources. If you and another author have a similar stance on something, you can say that, okay, I believe this is my stance, okay? Similar to what author states in this, okay? Another example is this can be found in this. State what you believe, then cite and source the corresponding author or writer. And if I could leave with my 2 cents, Dr. Sogunro, is one phrase that I live by, everybody. Repetition is the mother of mastery. Repetition is the mother of mastery. Some of you say, okay, how do I get better at a paper? I don't want to have anxiety about a paper. Repetition is the mother of mastery. The more you do something, the better you get at it, okay? Nobody knows Mozart's first work, Beethoven's first work, okay? We know about the symphonies, okay? Just like, I want you guys to start thinking about an essay as it's both art and science. It's an art. The more you do it, the better you get at it, guys, okay? The Do Influence is an amazing platform. It's an amazing, amazing resource. Dr. Sogunro has a book she's going to be sending to all of you. Utilize that as a resource. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. My undergrad career, it wasn't until junior, senior year, I started acing literally every one of my papers. Towards the end, the more I started doing it, the better I got, okay? Repetition is the mother of mastery. Be confident in your voice. Be encouraged, guys. You can do it. I believe in you. Thank you.
Thank you so much again. If there are any more questions, we'll entertain them now. If not, again, thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, in about a week from now, be expecting the video to be on our website, as well as an ebook to go along with the lecture. It'll contain the links, as well as the resources that we have in our presentation today, with all those wonderful things that were discussed by our wonderful panelists, Ms. Kyra Alvarez and Mr. Akintunde Sogunro. Again, have a great evening. Thank you, everyone. And we'll go ahead and end it here unless there were any last minute things.
All set.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful
Thanks,
evening.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, Kyra. Thank you, Tunde. Truly. Thank you, Alicia.
It's been an honor. Thank you, Alicia. Ladies, thank you so
Yes.
much.